Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. The distress signal that doomed entire star systems. The distress signal pulsed across the void, a desperate cry for help from the edge of known space. The wreckage of the outpost hung in silence, flames flickering in the vacuum as lifeless bodies floated among shattered steel. The Dominion of Cor had arrived, and with them came death. Admiral Julian Kane sat in the war room of the UNC Everest, eyes locked on the holographic projection. The message played again, static-filled, but clear enough, the last words of a dying station commander: "This is Outpost Theta 7 under attack. Unknown enemy, overwhelming force, casualties high." Then silence. Kane exhaled sharply. He turned to his officers, their faces grim and waiting for his orders. "How long ago was this sent?" he asked, his voice cold and controlled. 6 hours, sir," replied Lieutenant Vega as her fingers danced across the console. "Relay, satellites were taken down, the message barely got through." 6 hours. That means whoever did this is still in the area, or worse, they are moving deeper into human territory. "Who the hell are they?" Kane muttered. The answer came from Colonel Beckett, the intelligence officer: Galactic Dominion, an empire that conquered 3 species in the past century. "We've had brief contact, but nothing hostile until now." Kane clenched his jaw. Humanity had fought wars before, but against each other. This was different. This was an alien force that had wiped out an entire outpost without warning, without reason. How many ships in their fleet? Beckett hesitated. Reports suggest their standard invasion force is around 100 capital ships with thousands of fighter-class vessels. Silence fell over the room. That was more firepower than humanity had ever faced. "And how many do we have near that sector?" Kane asked. Vega's fingers worked the console again. "The closest task force is 5 ships, our main fleet is 2 systems away, 5 against 100. Kane leaned forward, hands clasped. "We're not going to win that fight conventionally." Beckett smirked slightly. "No, sir, but humans have never been known for playing fair." Kane allowed a small grin. "Damn right." The room erupted into controlled chaos as officers relayed orders. The Everest, a dreadnought-class warship, would lead the charge, and the 5 nearby vessels were ordered to harass the enemy, buying time. Meanwhile, the full might of the Terran Armada would be mobilized. Kane stood staring at the war map. This would be humanity's first interstellar war, and by the time they were done, the Korak would learn exactly why humanity had survived for so long. Prepare for war. The UNC Everest burned through slip space, her massive hull vibrating slightly under the stress of faster-than-light travel. The bridge was tense, officers moving with quiet urgency as Admiral Kane stood at the center, staring at the countdown timer: 2 minutes until reversion to real space, 2 minutes until they saw the aftermath of the attack on Outpost Theta 7. "Status on the Vanguard fleet?" Kane asked. Lieutenant Vega checked her display. "The Dauntless, Resolute, Vanguard, Indomitable, and Longbow are all on course. They'll drop in within 10 seconds of our arrival." "Good," Kane said, glancing at Beckett. "What's the likelihood they're still in the area?" The intelligence officer frowned. "If they wanted to send a message, they'd leave survivors. The fact that they didn't means they want a foothold in our territory." Kane nodded. "Then we hit them hard and fast. No mercy." A deep klaxon echoed through the bridge. 1 minute to real space transition, announced the navigator. The crew tightened their grips, everyone knew what was coming. The timer hit 0 with a lurch. The Everest burst from slip space, stars snapping into place around them. The remains of Theta 7 filled the view screen: twisted metal, drifting bodies, and the eerie flicker of fires consuming what little oxygen remained in the wreckage. Beyond it, like a black storm in the void, loomed the enemy. The Galactic Dominion was here. A fleet of massive, insectoid vessels hovered over the ruins. Their ships were angular, covered in chitinous plating, almost organic in design. Glowing, bioluminescent veins ran along their hulls, pulsing like a heartbeat, and there were dozens of them. Jesus Christ, Vega whispered. That's more than 100 ships. Kane's hands curled into fists. They were waiting for us, sir, a tech officer said, his face pale. We're being hailed. Kane's eyes narrowed. Put it through. The hollow screen crackled, then a figure appeared. It was tall, armored in dark exoskeletal plating, its 4 glowing eyes radiating an unnatural intelligence. Its mandibles clicked before it spoke in eerie, guttural English. Humans, you are trespassing in Dominion-claimed space. Your species is young, unproven, you were given no permission to expand. Your station was a warning. You slaughtered our people. The COR commander tilted its head slightly. They were irrelevant. Silence filled the bridge. Kane exhaled slowly, then spoke with steel in his voice. You've made a mistake. The alien chittered in amusement. No, human, you have the transmission cut. The Corfac fleet shifted, dozens of ships powered up their weapons. Kane didn't hesitate. All ships, engage. The void exploded into war. The first salvo tore through the darkness, energy beams from the Corfac fleet lanced toward the Everest, their glowing trails illuminating the wreckage of Outpost Theta 7. Kane braced himself as the ship's shields flared, absorbing the impact with a low, thunderous hum. Return fire, he barked. The Everest's rail gun spat tungsten rounds at near-light speeds, slamming into the lead Corfac vessels. Explosions rippled along their carapace-like hulls, sending debris scattering. The Vanguard fleet, Dauntless, Resolute, Vanguard, Indomitable, and Longbow, joined the fray, weaving between the enemy's towering warships, their Mac cannons roaring with every shot. Multiple hostiles inbound. Vega shouted. They're sending swarm ships. On the view screen, hundreds of smaller, insect-like craft peeled away from the larger Corfac vessels, their organic hulls shimmering with energy shields. They moved in unpredictable patterns, darting toward the human fleet like a cloud of death. Point defenses, light them up. Kane ordered. Flak cannons erupted from the Everest's hull, filling space with a storm of lead and laser fire. Dozens of enemy swarm ships were shredded in an instant, their fragile bodies no match for the defensive grid. But there were too many. The Longbow is taking fire. Kane turned in time to see the smallest of their ships get surrounded by Corfac swarmers. Explosions ragged its hull as it tried to maneuver, but the enemy was relentless. The ship shuddered as a final energy beam sliced through its midsection. A moment later, it detonated. Silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the beeping of consoles and the distant sound of battle outside. They just killed 150 of my crew, Kane said, his voice ice-cold. I want those bastards dead. Beckett leaned forward. Sir, I've been analyzing their formations, they're strong, but they have one major flaw. Go on. They rely too much on their carriers. If we take them out, the swarmers will be left without coordination. Kane nodded. Target the carriers. Vega relayed to the fleet, Mac rounds, full power. The human warships adjusted their angles, lining up their most powerful weapons. All ships, fire. The silence of space was shattered. The Everest's magnetic accelerator cannon discharged a slug the size of a bus, ripping through the void. The other dreadnoughts followed, their Mac round streaking toward the nearest Korak carrier. The first shot hit dead center, tearing straight through the alien vessel, the second impacted moments later, followed by a third. The carrier convulsed, its bioluminescent veins flickering wildly, then, with a violent shudder, it erupted into a burning, molten wreck. Kane barely had time to register the kill before another officer shouted, Sir, the COR fleet is shifting. On the view screen, the enemy warships suddenly reoriented, backing away. Their coordinated, aggressive assault had faltered. "They're retreating," Beckett murmured almost in disbelief. Kane exhaled, his fingers still gripping the armrests of his chair. "No," he said, "they're regrouping." Because the Korak weren't beaten yet, they were just getting started. The retreat was an illusion. The Korak didn't flee, they repositioned. Kane saw it happen in real time on the tactical display, their formation stretched, their swarmas dispersed, and their capital ship spread apart just enough to create new firing lanes. "They're adapting," Beckett muttered. "Fast." "Of course they are," Kane growled. "They're an empire, not some pirate fleet. They've conquered 3 species already, we're just another target." But they were about to learn that humans don't go down easy. "Vega, I need status on the fleet." The lieutenant scanned her console. The Indomitable took a direct hit to its engines, she's dead in the water. The Resolute lost half its forward batteries, the Dauntless and Vanguard are still combat ready, and the enemy, for capital ships destroyed, including the carrier, has still got more than 80 ships in the field. Kane gritted his teeth. They had inflicted damage, but it wasn't enough. The Korvac fleet was too large, too well coordinated, their losses barely slowed them down. "If humanity wants to survive this fight, we need to change the rules." Kane turned to Beckett. "You said the Korvac rely on carriers to coordinate their swarmas. What about their command ships? Who's running this show?" Beckett's eyes lit up. "They're hive ships. Each fleet operates under a single Korak Warmaster aboard a designated flagship. Kill the Warmaster, and the entire battle group falls into disarray." Kane cracked his knuckles. "Good. Time to introduce him to human ingenuity." He turned to his officers. "New plan, we make them think we're losing, a full retreat." Silence fell over the bridge. Vega blinked. "Sir, you heard me, order all ships to fall back. Make it messy, drop flares, vent some atmosphere, make it look like we're breaking." Kane's eyes gleamed with deadly intent. "We're baiting them." Vega nodded and relayed the command across the battlefield. Human warships peeled away, firing erratically as if their formations were collapsing. Plasma beams from Korak ships lanced through the retreating vessels, striking shields, clipping hulls, and, just as Kane predicted, the Korvac took the bait. The enemy pursued the Warmaster's hive ship, surrounded by elite Korvac escorts, advancing to deliver the final blow. "Now," Kane said, his voice deadly calm, "hit them with everything we've got." The trap was sprung. The human fleet whipped around with surgical precision, weapons primed and ready. The Korak were caught mid-maneuver, expecting a retreat rather than a counterattack. The Everest's Mac cannon fired first, sending a tungsten slug straight into the hive ship's forward hull. The round tore through its defenses, splitting the chitinous armor open like a wound. The Dauntless followed, launching a salvo of high-yield missiles, each warhead slammed into the flagship's exposed interior. The hive ship shuddered, and chaos erupted inside as Korvac officers scrambled, their wararms screeching in fury as flames and decompression vents tore through the vessel. Then the Vanguard delivered the final blow, an overcharged plasma lance straight into the flagship's core. The hive ship exploded, a shock wave rippling through space, scattering debris and sending smaller vessels tumbling. The Korvac fleet hesitated, their perfect coordination shattered, and Kane knew exactly what to do next. "Push the attack," he roared. "Make them pay." The humans counterattacked with fire and vengeance. The Korak had come expecting prey, instead, they had awakened warriors. The destruction of the Korvac hive ship sent a ripple through the battlefield. The once coordinated alien fleet hesitated, as if unsure of what to do next, their formation, once a precise war machine, fractured. Some ships stopped firing entirely, others wavered, shifting erratically as if awaiting new orders that would never come. Kane saw the hesitation and pounced. "All ships, press the attack." His voice rang with authority. Break their lines, take out their heavy hitters, and push them out of our system. The human fleet surged forward, rail guns blazing and missile trails crisscrossing the void. The Everest led the charge, its Mac cannon charging up for another devastating shot. The Dauntless and Vanguard flanked on either side, their point defenses swatting down Corfac swarmers as they cleared a path through the enemy. Aboard the Everest, Vega called out, "Sir, the Corfac fleet is still operational, but we've got a massive dip in their response time. It's like they don't know who's in charge anymore." Kane nodded grimly. Exactly, their hierarchy is broken. Without their war master, they're operating on instinct, and instincts can be exploited. Beckett grinned. Time to teach them what happens when you attack humanity. The Indomitable, despite its damaged engines, held its ground, unleashing a full salvo of torpedoes into the enemy ranks. The warheads found their marks, detonating against Korak hulls and sending biomechanical wreckage spinning into the void. But the battle wasn't over. "Sir," Vega suddenly shouted, "we've got a Korak dreadnought charging its main weapon, targeting us." Kane's stomach clenched as he saw the behemoth vessel shifting its massive, multi-jointed structure. A sickly green glow radiated from what could only be a planet-killer-class cannon. It was the kind of weapon that had turned entire fleets into slag. If it fired, the Everest, and likely half our fleet, would be gone. "Not on my watch," Kane growled. "Bring all forward batteries to bear on that ship. Target the cannon's power source." The human fleet unleashed hell. Rail gun rounds slammed into the dreadnought's thick armor. Plasma torpedoes detonated across its shields, causing them to flicker. Then the Vanguard swung around and fired a full Mach shot directly at the enemy's weapon array. The Korak dreadnought fired a searing green beam from the monstrous ship, aimed straight at the Everest, but it faltered. The energy stream sputtered as secondary explosions rocked the enemy ship from within. Then, in a glorious chain reaction, the dreadnought's power core detonated. A violent shock wave tore through space as the Corfac warship ripped apart from the inside, sending pieces of molten wreckage flying in every direction, some colliding with nearby ships, causing secondary explosions that added to the carnage. The once mighty Corfac fleet is failing. "Sir, the remaining ships are falling back," Vega announced. "They're running." Kane exhaled, allowing himself the smallest moment of relief before steel settled in his eyes. "Do not let them escape," he ordered. "I want every single one of those bastards either dead or limping back home to tell their leaders what happens when you attack humanity." The fleet pursued, picking off retreating vessels with precise, merciless strikes. The Korak had come to conquer, instead, they had been humiliated. As the last surviving enemy ships fled into the depths of space, a heavy silence settled over the battlefield. The wreckage of Theta 7 remained a painful reminder of what had been lost, but amid the ruins, humanity had won its first true war against an alien empire, and Kane knew one thing for certain: this was only the beginning. The battlefield was still, smoke and debris drifted through the void, illuminated by the flickering light of distant fires still burning in the remains of Theta 7. The last of the Korak fleet had been either destroyed or forced into retreat, leaving behind only wreckage and the ghosts of the fallen. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the Everest, his hands resting on the console as he surveyed the aftermath. Victory had come, but it had not come cheap. "Status report," he said, his voice quieter now. Vega wiped a thin sheen of sweat from her forehead before responding, "We lost the longbow, and the Indomitable is crippled. Casualty estimates are still coming in, but by her count, thousands, sir, across all ships." Kane clenched his jaw. He had known this battle would cost them, he had prepared for it, but knowing and feeling were two different things. Each name, each life lost, weighed on him. Beckett broke the silence. "We may have won this fight, but this isn't over. The Korak don't just let things go, they'll send more." Kane nodded. "I know. That's why we're not giving them the chance." Beckett raised an eyebrow. "What are you suggesting?" Kane turned to his officers, his voice firm. We don't sit back and wait for their retaliation, we take the fight to them. A stunned silence followed his words. Even Vega, always the first to back his orders, looked uncertain. Sir, are you saying we should go on the offensive? Their territory is deep, their empire is massive. Kane's gaze was steel. And now they know that humans won't be easy prey. We have one advantage right now, they didn't expect us to fight back like this. We hit them hard before they can regroup. We strike at their supply lines, disrupt their command structure, force them to waste time and resources trying to stop us. Beckett nodded slowly, a grin creeping onto his face. Guerrilla tactics, turn their own momentum against them. Exactly, Kane said. They think they can break us, we show them what happens when humans get pissed off. Vega exhaled. Sir, you know what this means, right? We won't be fighting just one battle, this could turn into a full-scale war. Kane stared at the wreckage outside, at the floating remains of Theta 7. The blood of our people is already on the Korvac hands. This war has already started, he said. Now we make sure it ends on our terms. Vega swallowed, then straightened. I'll begin fleet-wide coordination. Beckett smirked. Time to make these alien bastards regret ever hearing the name human. Kane allowed himself a small smile. The first battle was over, but the war for humanity's survival had just begun, and Kane would make sure the Korvac Dominion never forgot the day they crossed the wrong species. The war had begun. Admiral Kane knew that the Korvac wouldn't sit idle after their humiliating defeat at Theta 7, if they wanted to survive, humanity had to strike first, no hesitation, no mercy. A week after the battle, the Everest and a fleet of 15 Terran warships lurked at the edge of a Korvac-controlled system. Their target, Vorak Prime, a critical Korvac supply hub deep in enemy territory. Intelligence reports indicated it was lightly defended, most of the Dominion's forces were still scrambling to recover from their losses. This was their window. Kane stood at the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he studied the holographic display. Vorak Prime was massive, a sprawling industrial world covered in biomechanical structures. Dozens of refineries, supply depots, and orbital stations ringed the planet. If they took it out, they wouldn't just be delivering a blow to the Korvac's logistics, they'd be proving that humanity wasn't just defending itself, it was fighting back. Lieutenant Vega, status on enemy defenses, Kane ordered. Vega's fingers moved over the console. We're detecting a defensive fleet of 20 warships, but nothing heavier than a battleship. No sign of a war master. Kane nodded. Then they're not expecting an attack this deep into their space. Perfect. Beckett grinned. They think we'll stay on our side of the line, they don't know we don't play by their rules. Kane exhaled. All right, people, this is it. We go in fast, hit them hard, and get out before they can muster reinforcements. Our priority targets are their fuel depots and shipyards, no supplies, no war machine. A ripple of acknowledgement ran through the bridge crew. All ships, prepare to engage. The Everest led the charge, dropping from slip space alongside the rest of the Terran fleet. The human warships exploded into real space, their sudden arrival catching the Korvac forces completely off guard. For a brief moment, there was silence, then chaos began. Enemy ships scrambled. Vega reported, they're trying to form a defensive line. Not fast enough, Kane said. Weapons free, hit them before they organize. The human fleet opened fire. Mac cannons roared, sending slugs the size of city buses ripping through enemy hulls. Rail gun fire stitched across the void, punching holes in the Korvac's organic warships. Missile salvos cut through the darkness, detonating in brilliant flashes of destruction. The Korvac, still struggling to react, tried to mount a defense. Plasma bolts lanced through the battlefield, but the damage was already done. A Korvac battleship took a direct Mac hit to its core, breaking apart in a silent firestorm of debris. Another ship, still launching from a dry dock, was annihilated before it could even power up its shields. First shipyard is down, Beckett announced. Fuel depots are next. On the view screen, human bombers streaked toward the surface, releasing high-yield bunker busters into the heart of Vorak Prime's refineries. Seconds later, massive explosions erupted across the planet's surface. Fireballs raged across the industrial complexes, turning the Korak's own infrastructure into their funeral pyre. Their defenses are collapsing, Vega shouted, barely able to contain the excitement in her voice. They're pulling back. Kane's eyes narrowed. They're not retreating, they're calling for help. And he was right. Suddenly, new contacts blinked into existence on the sensor grid, the telltale energy signatures of Korvac reinforcements. Kane's gut tightened. Damn it, we've overstayed our welcome. Vega paled as she scanned the readings. Sir, we've got multiple heavy warships inbound. These are bigger than anything we've fought before. Kane turned back to the display. On the far edge of the system, 3 massive vessels emerged from slip space, each one dwarfing even the Everest. Their hulls pulsed with energy, their weapons glowing ominously. Beckett let out a low whistle. Well, the Korak had sent their war juggernauts, and they're coming straight for the human fleet. Kane made a snap decision. We've done enough damage. All ships, fall back. The human fleet began its tactical retreat, firing as they went to cover their escape. As the juggernauts bore down on them, the massive Korak warships fired, sending devastating beams of green energy cutting through space. One of the smaller human destroyers, the Valiant, was hit mid-maneuver, its hull splitting apart before it detonated in a flash of light. Kane clenched his fists. Move faster, damn it. The Everest's engines burned at full power, dodging through the debris field as the fleet made its way back to the slip space window. More enemy ships poured into the system, but the humans had already done their damage. Sir, we're clear. Vega shouted. Kane didn't hesitate. All ships, jump now. One by one, the human warships vanished into slip space, leaving behind nothing but destruction and burning ruins. Hours later, aboard the Everest, Kane stood in the dim glow of the war room watching footage of the attack. Vorak Prime burned, they had destroyed 3 shipyards, 7 fuel depots, and crippled the enemy's local fleet. They had dealt a serious blow to the Korvac war machine, but Kane knew this wasn't over. The Korvac weren't just going to let this slide, they would come back harder, angrier, and next time they'd be prepared. Beckett stepped beside him, crossing his arms. We hit them where it hurts, but they're going to hit back soon. Kane nodded. Then let them come. He turned his gaze cold as steel. Because now we're ready. The war had begun in earnest, and humanity wasn't going to stop until the Korak were wiped from the stars. The Korak response came faster than anyone expected. Barely a week after the assault on Vorak Prime, humanity's outer colonies detected massive fleet movements, not just skirmish groups or scouting parties, but a full-scale war armada. The Korvac weren't just retaliating, they were coming to exterminate humanity. Admiral Kane stood in the war room of the Everest, staring at the holographic projections of incoming Korak forces. The display showed multiple converging fleets, their trajectories aimed directly at human-controlled space. Jesus Christ, Vega whispered. There are at least 400 warships. The bridge was silent. Even Beckett, usually full of smug confidence, looked grim. Kane exhaled slowly, his hands resting on the table. They're not playing around anymore. They're not just hitting back, Beckett said, they want to wipe us out. Kane's jaw clenched. Then we give them a fight they'll never forget. He turned to Vega. What's our fleet strength? She pulled up the numbers. After the Vorak assault, we're down to 86 warships across all sectors. That includes dreadnoughts, carriers, and escort ships. We're outnumbered almost 5 to 1. Not ideal. Beckett muttered, not impossible, but not ideal. Kane's eyes narrowed. Then we don't fight them head-on, we bleed them dry. Beckett smirked. You've got a plan, don't you? Kane nodded. We use what humanity has always used to survive: strategy, deception, and sheer stubbornness. He turned back to the war map and outlined the plan. Phase 1, the Gauntlet. Instead of meeting the Corvac in open battle, humanity forces them to fight on our terms. Kane pointed at 3 key systems: Echo 9, Meridian Prime, and Hellsgate. These aren't major colonies, but they sit along the fastest slipstream routes into the core worlds. We turn these systems into kill zones, he said. Mines, orbital artillery, automated turrets, stealth strike groups, we make them pay for every inch they take. Vega nodded. It'll slow them down, maybe even affect their frontline forces before they reach our major planets. Beckett grinned. And if they break through? Kane's expression hardened. Then we hit them with Phase 2, the Executioner Strike. Kane zoomed in on the largest Corvac warship leading the assault, a Leviathan-class dreadnought unlike anything humanity had faced before. The Korak overlord himself was rumored to be aboard. We take out their leadership. No war master, no central command, just chaos. Vega whistled. That thing makes the Everest look like a patrol boat. You're saying we kill the overlord? Exactly, Kane said. Cut off the head and the body falls apart. Beckett chuckled. A long shot, but I like it. Kane turned to the Everest's AI interface. Athena, give me a probability assessment. The AI's smooth voice filled the room. A direct assault has a 12% chance of success, however, a coordinated infiltration and sabotage mission raises the success probability to 48%. If additional diversionary tactics are applied, the likelihood of enemy disarray increases to 72%. Beckett grinned. I love those odds. Kane turned back to his officers. We make them bleed. We break their fleet, and we end this war before it truly begins. Silence filled the room, then Vega nodded. Let's do it. Beckett smirked. Time to show the Korak why messing with humans was the worst mistake they ever made. Kane gave the final order: prepare for war. The Corvac armada arrived at Echo 9 3 days later, and the slaughter began. The gauntlet had begun. The Korak armada arrived at Echo 9, a seemingly insignificant system on the outer edge of human space. To them, it was just another stepping stone on their march toward total conquest. They expected resistance, but they did not expect hell itself. The bridge of the Everest was silent as Admiral Kane watched the Corvac fleet emerge from slip space. Massive, insectoid warships glided through the void, their bioluminescent hulls pulsing with an eerie rhythm. The lead vessel, a Leviathan-class dreadnought, dwarfed even the Everest. Its spiked hull glowed with stored energy, ready to unleash a planet-killer blast at a moment's notice. Vega whispered, Jesus, there's so many. Kane didn't flinch, his fingers tightened into a fist. Let them come, he said. Beckett grinned. They have no idea what they're walking into. The Korak fleet surged forward, undaunted, preparing to sweep through Echo 9. They believed they would encounter only minor resistance, a handful of human warships, maybe some orbital defenses. They were wrong, because Echo 9 had been transformed into a death trap. As the Corvac fleet advanced, hundreds of stealth mines, carefully deployed days in advance, activated simultaneously. A sudden storm of detonations ripped through the first wave of enemy ships, explosions blossomed across their hulls, shredding smaller vessels outright and crippling larger ones. The Korak, taken completely off guard, tried to pull back only to trigger even more mines. The comms crackled as the Korak fleet, slowing, pulled into a defensive formation. Kane smirked. Not fast enough. Hidden within the debris field, human stealth frigates powered up their weapons. All units, engage. The Dauntless, Valiant, and Revenant emerged from the void, launching a devastating first strike on the confused Korak forces. Rail gun rounds punched through weakened shields, torpedoes tore into exposed reactor cores, an entire enemy cruiser split in half, its burning remains tumbling through space. Aboard the Everest, Vega shouted, "They're trying to reorganize, but they're in total disarray." Beckett grinned like a cornered animal. Kane's voice was ice cold. "Now we go for the kill." The Everest charged forward, leading the main fleet into the chaos. The Corvac fought back hard, their plasma cannon scorching space with deadly green energy. A human destroyer, the Triumph, took a direct hit and exploded in a blinding fireball, but the humans didn't falter. The Everest's Mac cannon fired its tungsten slug, tearing straight through a Korak battleship and ripping it apart in seconds. The Vanguard unleashed a barrage of missiles targeting the Corvac command vessels, and explosions engulfed the battlefield. The once unstoppable Korak armada was collapsing. Then, the moment Kane had been waiting for, the Leviathan-class dreadnought is moving in, Vega shouted. They're charging their main cannon. Kane's jaw clenched. This is the moment of truth. All ships, focus fire on that dreadnought, now. The final battle for Echo 9 was about to begin, and humanity would not break. The Leviathan-class dreadnought loomed over the battlefield, its grotesque, insectoid hull glowing with sickly green light as it prepared to fire its main weapon. Admiral Kane watched the energy reading spike. This is it. If that cannon fires, it won't just take out a ship, it will rip a hole through the entire human fleet. We have 60 seconds before it reaches full charge, Vega shouted. Kane didn't hesitate. All ships, focus fire on that dreadnought. The fleet shifted, every rail gun, every missile launcher, every Mac cannon locked onto one target. The Everest fired first, the tungsten slug screamed through the void, slamming into the dreadnought's armor. The impact shattered outer plating, sending molten chunks of alien metal spinning away. A second later, a barrage of missiles from the Dauntless and Vanguard struck, pummeling the dreadnought's forward section. But the Leviathan was a monster. Despite the damage, it kept charging. Kane's teeth clenched. Damn it, we're not hitting it hard enough. Beckett's voice cut in sharply and urgently. Sir, we need to hit the power cord directly, that's the only way to shut down that cannon. Vega's fingers flew across her console.